Hola, bienvenido from Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I'm Gerald Krauser, your host of the Leap in Life podcast, where I interview guests from around the world who share their stories of taking leaps to live the life of their dreams. Today's guest is Pamela Wagner. Pamela started her career at Google, but after being kicked out in 2015, she launched a marketing agency that helped business owners turn struggling Google ad campaigns into consistent revenue-generating machines. In just 4 months, Pamela was making more in a month than she had been at Google. She also holds a master's in psychology from Harvard and has traveled to over 100 countries, mostly solo. She was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2017. Quite the journey. I can't wait to dive in and hear more. Welcome to the show, Pamela.
Thank you so much, Gerald.
So, just as we kind of get into this a little bit, any more that you want to add to that intro there? Or?
I think the one thing that's probably anyway come out through our conversation is that I'm quite a curious person, quite the rebel, and I've always tried to go my own way instead of what other people say. So we'll bring us some examples of that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Conversations we've had since getting to know each other a little bit more. I think there's some good stories in there to get. I actually kind of want to get right into the leap a little bit here, into entrepreneurship, kind of getting in there, maybe even starting the fact, were you always dreamed of having your own business, or how did that come about? How did you end up taking a leap into entrepreneurship?
Not at all. It was not in my plans. Even until I joined Google, I never really knew what I really wanted to do with my life. I was a classic business student where you study business because you don't know what else you want to study, kind of like, and you don't know what else you want to do. And it was just that moment where once I left Google, I found myself in a position where I could do whatever I wanted, which was extremely freeing. I didn't have to go to a class, I didn't have to listen to any boss, I didn't have to work a certain amount of hours, I didn't have to be in a certain place, like everything was up to me. And I thought, well, this is the perfect time to see if I could live life on my very own terms. And worst case scenario was that if I failed at that, I could always go back and find a job. So I just risked it. I come from a background of no entrepreneurs in my family. I was the first one to finish a degree at the university. I was the first one to then create my company. I was the first one to work abroad. So there were a lot of first ones and nothing really in my path that could have predicted me ending up there.
Okay. I love that. I love the fact that just kind of, just taking a risk on yourself there, and realizing the fact that you can always kind of pivot and go back if things don't work out. I think that's, I think one thing that maybe holds people back from taking leaps and taking risks is they could, sometimes it's a permanent, but I think a lot of people find when they kind of head down that path, you kind of bet on yourself. That's where success and beauty happens in life there.
Absolutely. And I think it was so far the best bet I probably took on myself. I've been happier than I probably could have ever been in corporate. And it would be very difficult for me to go back to any corporate. So I really thrive in an environment where I can be myself, where I can do what I want from where I want and with who I want to work.
All right. Well, I think even, let me just dip a little further back in there, because talking about just being yourself and finding your own place and just living your own life there, kind of stories you told me a little bit about. You started university at a young age, you started your traveling at a young age, kind of made your own path in there. Can you talk a little bit about those journeys?
Yeah, so my dream in school was always to study at Harvard, but I didn't know how to do that. For reference, I grew up in Austria, I grew up speaking only German. Of course, I learned a couple of languages in school, as most Europeans do, but I didn't come from a family with like a whole bunch of money. Like, it was very classic, middle income family. And so paying for university was really something that was not in the stars, so to speak, for me. Because when you grew up in Austria, you're used to school and university being free. So there's no budget that you typically have, or you wouldn't even think about taking out a loan, right? And at the age of 16, which was when I finished high school, I didn't even know how to go about a scholarship or, how it would be about like moving to another country. So there were a lot of unknowns. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stay in Austria. I'll study in Austria for free. And while I study, I can work abroad, I can travel abroad, and that way I can get that abroad experience that I always wanted, without having to, look at scholarships or spending money and so on.
Okay. And so when you were traveling abroad, since you kind of had modest income background in there, how were you traveling? What kind of selections were you making to travel and supporting yourself?
So when I was 16, maybe for reference, like I skipped 2 grades in high school, which is why I finished school 2 years, or in Austria 2 to 3 years early than everybody else. I got my first job already in a bank. So a month after I had finished high school, I started working. So I really made sure that while I was studying, I was working. Next to that, I was actually also volunteering. So there were always a whole bunch of things that I did in order to make sure that I could at least somehow support myself. I, of course, had a little bit of support from my parents as well, but the majority was really on me to make that money reinvested, if you want to say that, into traveling. And I think I also can have a very frugal way of living and a very efficient way with dealing with money. So while, like, for example, my fellow students spend their money on like going out on the weekends and alcohol and clubs and whatever, I never got drunk in my life. I rarely drank. I didn't go to clubs much. I went out a little bit, but not much. And always had a real strong focus on like, hey, right now, what is the best use for my energy? And I didn't find that going to a club and getting drunk was the best use of my energy. I found that if I would go to a conference, if I would travel abroad, if I would meet people, that would probably add a lot more value to my life than just, losing myself.
Okay. So on that front there, was it a bit, did you find it a bit of a struggle at all? Because I think sometimes when you get in those communities or get out there in the traveling, especially the younger crowd there, or even as people kind of get a little bit older than they're still, I think you start to see a little bit more of a shift away from some of that as people kind of get a little older and mature in that regards there. But, when you're a teenager there, I mean, what, did you feel any pressures there? Or?
Yeah, I think my advantage was that I was always bullied in school. Like throughout the 10 years that I went to school, I was bullied, which means I rarely had any friends. I, was never really allowed to bring any friends home. I was always on my own, and that made me very resilient towards anything that other people said when I was going my own way. So even if I was out with people and everybody was drinking, I'm like, oh, why don't you drink something? Have a drink. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like there was 0 emotional repercussions for me. Like I couldn't care less if people thought it was good or bad, whether I drank or not. So I think that really prepared me well to just be like, you know what? I know what's right for me, and that's what I'm doing right now. And if you don't like it, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go about it, a great way to live, and I think it's most important to be true to yourself there, and I think that probably plays in well to your success and finding along your journey there. So then you go through, you've got travel, you've got university, and then what happens after university?
I finished my bachelor's in Austria at the Vienna University of Economics, and then I did my master's at Holt International Business School in Dubai and Shanghai, so I graduated in Shanghai. And while I was in Shanghai, I was working with a career coach who made me aware of Google looking for people to hire to work for them. And I absolutely underestimated myself. I would have never applied myself because I thought, well, pretty much who am I that Google would be interested in me? There's obviously a lot smarter people out there. But my career coach really ended up encouraging me and helping me, and I knew people who were working at Google, so I reached out to them. And I had them refer me. So when I was applying to Google, I had 3 people referring me, which is very powerful. And that came all from the network I built up during my university years before. So I always made sure that I built up a network because I knew for whatever I wanted, it was always easier if people could refer me than if I would just submit an application for something.
Okay, yeah, that's great advice out of there. I'm just trying to go out there building that network and getting those referrals, and so many of us just kind of reach out just blindly and wonder why doors never seem to open for us there. So yeah, great foresight in that there. So you go to work for Google, but that doesn't quite work out so well there. Or did it? Or what did you gain from that time there?
So the first boss I had was an incredible man, and I'm very grateful to him. And I had great team members. I won great friends for life there that I'm still in contact with. I won like business partners, mentors. I met a lot of great people. And I also learned a lot about Google Ads, Google Analytics, Google My Business, and all of these products, which is really valuable. And while at that time my work seemed fairly repetitive, I realized in hindsight that I learned so many things so well in such a short amount of time, where it would be impossible to learn it outside of the company, right? So I'm very grateful for the time that I had, the people that I met, and unfortunately the second boss that I had, which we grew as a team, and so everything was reshuffled and rearranged, and she took us over at a moment where my performance was among the lowest in the team. So naturally you tend to have a bias unless you work consciously towards that. And I kept improving it, but at the time where I was fired, my performance was above the team average, which was actually the main goal. But the reason was that, it's communication, right? And I've learned later that you fire somebody with the reason of communication when there is actually no valid reason to fire them, but when it's more on a personal note. And I've always been the person to speak my mind. I'm not good at political corporate jargon, not at all. And so I think that wasn't the best fit, probably, where I don't just say nice things just to be liked by somebody. I say what I think is right and what I think is on my mind in the best possible way. Probably also at that age back then, I didn't know how to say certain things in the best possible way, so I absolutely take responsibility for my part there as well. But I think it was like a little bit that kick in the butt, so to speak, that I needed in order to go on this own journey of creating my company. Because if that wouldn't have happened, I would have stayed in corporate probably for longer than it would have been good for me.
Yeah.
So I have nothing but gratitude for the whole experience.
Yeah, a few things there that just jumped out. It jumped out at me the other day when we were talking too. Is that, just how invaluable it is to get that type of experience for a large company like Google, and you're going in and understanding the different analytics, how that was working, seeing different businesses out there. It comes back to, one thing, just a side note is, I think the best business advice I got from Howard Schultz, the Starbucks CEO. Knew him from growing up, and when I got out of college, he knew I had some entrepreneurial aspirations, and so he sat down and talked to me, and he kind of told me, it's just like, go work at these big companies, learn what you can at the big companies, and then take that back to the smaller businesses, and just so much more you can add to it. And it's been just the best advice that I've had, and I've done that throughout my career, where I've gone back and forth between large Fortune 500 companies and then going back to just smaller startups or growing companies, and there's just so much more to be able to add from having that knowledge there. So let's step into that a little bit then. So you took that knowledge and you went out and started your own company and were able to provide that for other businesses.
Yeah, that's the smooth version. That's a very smooth version. So after that experience of getting kicked out, because obviously that's a shock at first, right? I gave myself about 3-4 weeks, so I said, you know what, I'm gonna allow myself not to do any work now, because also the 6 years until then, I'd always studied, worked, and everything, right? So I barely ever took any breaks, which at that age was absolutely okay, because I had all the energy in the world, right? And then slowly I started signing up on Upwork, so I used that as a platform, and my goal is every day I'm gonna submit 3 applications, right, for projects. And mind you, back then Upwork was a lot different, right? So it was, for somebody like me, I would say it was still fairly easy to find projects back then. And I also slowly started reaching out to my network and saying, hey, I'm available for these kind of projects and let me know if you kind of like want to work together. And taking these steps, I got the first inquiries. I totally undercharged myself and undersold myself. And by about month 4 that I was out of Google, I made more money a month than I made at Google in a month. So I'd managed to replace my monthly salary.
That's fantastic to do from zero to, only 4 months to get there.
Yeah, and that without like any entrepreneurial background and knowing how to really do it. And I was like, well, if I got this far, I guess I don't need to apply to another job again. And I can just stretch as a company and I can probably take it a lot further. So I always focus in my life on creating those small wins so that I can prove to my brain that, hey, I can actually do this, even though it's something new to me.
I like that. I like the going after small wins there. It's just like find that I'm trying to build habits or just kind of improve myself. It's just the smallest little win just adds and builds that momentum going forward there.
Yeah. They're worth more than what most people think, and it's also the advice I tend to share with people that feel like they're a little bit down or things are not going their way or they're not in where they want to be. I'm like, focus on the small wins, right? Write them down every day. It's so important because that thing really keeps you going.
Yeah, I think that's kind of especially important there when you've kind of got yourself to kind of look at in the mirror. You're kind of, not necessarily have that other accountability or people you're working with. I think we talked a little bit the other day about community and just a little more background to our audience. You and I met through Dynamite Circle, which is the community for entrepreneurs, location independent entrepreneurs. And so it's nice to have a community that, like-minded individuals, people are trying to, in our case, it's entrepreneurs are trying to grow, but we also have some shared background in the community with location independence. But when you started off on your own there, what kind of community did you have? Or?
I did have I would say mostly alumni community. So it was an alumni community from a student organization that I was part of that's called AIESEC, AIESEC. That's been in over 100 countries, I think, and I worked for 4 years with them. And that was a big reason why or how I was able to create a network of people pretty much all over the world. Then it was a little bit the network of the university where I did my bachelor degree, and then the university where I did my master's degree. And because I lived like in Dubai and Shanghai, and especially Dubai, I was able to expand my network even more because it's such a multicultural place. And then of course, once you leave Google, there's plenty of like former Googlers that you can connect with, mingle with, and And I was trying to think if there's like any other community at that point when I left. Nope, those were I think the main 3, 4. Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, that's, being able to tap into a community and just find your people to be able to help on that journey. And it sounds like you've done a good job of networking, throughout your time there, that it's, helpful when you jump in there as opposed to, it's harder to just kind of jump into a new community without any background or anything there, just, maybe lack of participation. And that's one thing, I also admire about you, kind of looking back through, I think you and I joined Dynamite Circle around the same time, but I see you as so much more active and participating there. It's like,
I don't know about that, but I'll take the perception. Well,
it's in the forum and such there, and but that's especially as an entrepreneur, that's very, very important there. You brought up a few things in here about just the different locations you've been. So you built this business, location independent. How did that impact you growing the business, or just the challenges maybe of having, moving around a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So I think for me, the main criteria from the beginning was always to create a business where I can work from whenever, however, with whoever, and wherever. And that seems to have been such a non-negotiable statement that anything I did just evolved around that, right? So things just kind of fell into place. For example, if I had clients approach me and they were like, oh, when can we meet in person? Can you pass by our company? I would typically say no to that because I was like, for the work that I do and for the results that I want to help you create, me visiting your company is not necessary at all. There's zero correlation to the success of our work. And if they did not accept that, if they were like, oh no, but we really want to like have you there in person, whatever, I'd be like, I'm sorry, but then this is not a good fit, and I think you should look for somebody else. So I was kind of like really clear on what I wanted. I never put like a monetary goal above that. I never like bended or broke just to make other people happy or just to make some money. That was not something that would work for me. And so it's literally from wherever I was, I always found ways to work with people. The time zone difference makes less of a difference than what most people think. A lot of people are worried, oh, if I'm in whatever country, it's gonna be difficult for me to work with my clients from another country. But I found that literally wherever I was in the world, whether it's like the United Arab Emirates, Vietnam, New Zealand, Austria, Jamaica, and so on, you can always find a time during the day that works for most people. I've never had a single client complain about the time zone changes. I've never had a single client complain about the meeting times. And for all of us, it was always during like decent times. Nobody had to like sacrifice his sleep or anything. So I think it all really breaks down to the fact that I wanted it so badly, and so everything just conspired in my favor, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the thing that stands out to me is just your consistency with yourself and being true to yourself in there. Admire that there. It's something that when I look back, and I guess being here this week, and just beautiful weather. My happy place is by the sea.
Yes.
And so I've spent a lot of time these past couple of weeks that I've been in Playa, just kind of with my journal out and kind of going through and looking back through life. I kind of like to check in on myself, see where I've been, where I'm going, find just amazing clarity right now. And it's funny how things seem to be, falling in place, so to speak. But it's also just I know who I am in this moment. And it's kind of looking back through times when I kind of had that little shift there, where I was struggling a bit there because I was trying too hard to kind of fix everything. And maybe sometimes that's the pressure. I had family young, so I felt that pressure to make sure I was fixing things with family. But in that, I was chasing things that weren't always true to myself. And once I kind of found that clarity, that's when I kind of found those clients that aligned with who I was, who I wanted to be, how I wanted to serve them, and that's where kind of true success and happiness also has been for me. So appreciate how you've been able to kind of stay true to yourself in your journey.
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process, I would say.
I do get that though.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to step into is just you talk about just being more productive. Your program is, make sure I get this right here, hustle less. Wait, what's the second part? That's hustle less, work.
And live more.
And
hustle
live
less,
more.
live more.
See,
Yes.
I don't know why I'm in work mode there. I just kind of confused
That's
myself.
fine. That's fine. It's a long
Should
name.
be in here. So it's hustle less, live more.
Yes, it's a long name. While I can be really good at branding and marketing for other people, I think it's been the hardest to do that for myself. So I was like, I'll stick with that name, and if anything better comes to my mind, I'll change it.
It's a great name. I'm just stumbling on my Americanness here, where we are taught so much about just work hard, hustle more, work hard.
It should be an antidote to that, right? Where it's kind of like reminding people, hey, like working hard works well for you when you're young. I would say when you're under 30. But once you kind of like cross that age of 30, when you start, think about getting married, getting a family, and so on, the things have to shift in order for you to be happy in the long run, be happy and healthy. if you have a family, if you're married, you can't work 60, 80 hours a week and still have a good relationship or a good marriage, right? Or a good relationship with your kids. And it also reminds us of the fact that so many studies by now have found that we're actually not productive beyond working 6 hours a day. Anything that we do after 6 hours a day, our productivity sharply declines. When people work like 10, 12-hour days, it's a lot of busy work, but it's not actually doing work where they use their full brain power, where they're really finding solutions. And so I figured if I really optimize that, then I can get a lot more out of life than if I just, grind and hustle and, succumb to that kind of like story.
Okay, I like that there, and I can relate to, just the hours or getting kind of beyond the 6 and just how much more productive it does feel in that more condensed time. I mean, I also, I think I've brought this up with other guests where I just feel so much more productive when I'm traveling, and I think that's probably because I'm forced to condense my time because there's so much I want to do. I mean, not that I'm on vacation or anything, but there's things I want to actually be able to see, or there's friends I meet. The world becomes very small when you start traveling around a bit and find that you have friends everywhere you go. But it's when I go back home in Seattle, I find that I've got more time on my hands, and I'm at the computer more. I've got longer days in there, but I feel like I'm actually getting less done than the days when I'm on the road in other countries and just putting in a little less hours in there.
Yeah, because it's time limits, whether they're artificial or real, automatically make us work more efficiently, right? So there's also this, I always forget the name, but it's like it's been proven by studies that if you give somebody 2 or 10 hours for a task, then they will use the full time, right? So you can get a lot more done by limiting your time and looking at your task list and saying like, hey, so if I only had like 30 minutes right now, how would I structure this? What would I do? And for all the perfectionists out there, maybe doing work in those 30 minutes is just enough. Because perfectionism is anyway overrated, especially if you look at all the tech companies and how we're surrounded, right? Nothing is perfect anymore, right? So I don't think like really aiming for perfectionism makes a lot of sense these days. But making sure that you use the time that you have in the most efficient way possible enables you to have just a much more full life. You can do more sports, go to the sea more often, right? Like now I'm doing yoga, I'm doing paddle boarding, I get my juice in the morning, I can meet up friends, right? So there's life becomes a lot richer if you understand how time constraints can really positively affect your productivity, and also understanding when you're at your most productive. Like for me, for example, I'm the most productive actually during morning hours. Like if I notice this especially when I have jet lag and I'm traveling across a bunch of time zones, if I wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, I meditate, I work out, and then I sit down for 2-3 hours of work. By 8 a.m. I'm done. It's the best feeling in the world. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to replicate it much, but when it happens to me, oh my god, that's the best for me.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So how do you kind of get around that jet lag or the different time zones there? I mean, you say when you find that that sweet spot there, but it sounds like it's not always something you do find. So how do you adjust when you're kind of going from continent to continent?
It depends. Typically the general rule of thumb is that you need about a day for each hour in terms of adjustment, which I find more or less to be true. But again, whatever we believe in is what becomes real. I just haven't made an effort to change my way of thinking around that. So I just accept it as what it is. I typically try to take it a little bit easier when I'm in a new country, when I travel at least across 5-6 hours of time zone difference. Maybe the first day, not have any calls. Maybe the first day, go take a massage. Eat really healthy. Just make sure that I give my body grace and space to adjust. I haven't found that jet lag gets easier for me. It's still the same difficulty wherever I go, although when I go from east to west, it tends to be a little bit easier. But I mean, I remember when I was in Taiwan about 2 years ago, and I think it was like a 7 or 8 hour time zone difference that I crossed to get there. And the first week I was in Taiwan, oh my god, every single day my body was giving me different ailments. One day I was sneezing, the next day I felt sick in my tummy, the next day I was coughing, and so on, right? And it took a week, and I swear to you, after a week, everything was fine. So yeah, it's you just deal with it. You just I just take it as it is and accept it, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still looking for that great piece of advice on how to go back and forth, because I do find that when I go back, when I head east, it's just, I struggle to figure out how to get to sleep, and it just messes with my schedule. And as hard as I try, I'll still find myself like up all night, and then finally like 6 a.m. in the morning when I first go across to Europe there. It's a challenge there, and it's easier. I find that I can actually sleep well and zonk out pretty early when I do come back up to the west there. So definitely a little bit of difference there going east versus west.
Yeah, the one thing that's helped me is taking melatonin just to fall asleep.
Yeah, I've been trying to do that. I think that helped on my last trip to Europe there.
Yeah, but anything else so far? I mean, it interests me. I've looked into myriad of opportunities. You know, whether it's like ground yourself or go to sleep early the days before, or whatever. Yeah.
Sounds like it's just best to just recognize that it's going to be a bit of an adjustment to just kind of adjust your schedule from there, and have that opportunity to do that. That's I guess that's just how you kind of get around it.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. Just gonna take 1 second here, because I want to see if there's anything I'm missing out here, because I think I'm kind of really hit most of what I wanted to touch on. Kind of breeze through this a bit here.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just thought I would just take 1 second to see in there, but I think I think I'm just going to ask a quick little question here, and then kind of get a little into the closing there.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't see the transitions back through. It's like, oh, I paused, and I was like, where was I?
That's fine. Keeps people's attention.
I know. So, wow, so it's quite the journey you've been on, through kind of starting, university travel, starting your own marketing agency. What is next for you?
I think for now, a big focus for me is on just putting out everything that I know for free, whether that's YouTube, whether that's any kind of other social media. Just putting out that knowledge and trying to help people with whatever I can, and whoever then wants more help in that area, obviously we can always chat about working together, but that's currently the biggest focus. Take really everything I have, and I have so much content, I have so much recorded stuff, like it just feels right to put it out there, because there's no use if I just keep it all to myself. So that's kind of like the next big thing or thing that I'm focusing on for this year.
I like that.
Yeah.
Especially somebody that has started this podcast really just to share some of these great stories and that I've been having, from meeting people like yourself over these years of travel. I think there's just so much value to be able to just share with others all these experiences that we've had. So any closing advice that you have then for someone that wants to be starting on an entrepreneurial journey, taking a leap for themselves there?
I would say approach it with curiosity. If something shows up that's unexpected, say, kind of like, and I do this the same way in my mind, I'm like, oh, what can I learn here? or what am I supposed to see here, or what am I supposed to like do here? And understand that your business at any point in time is a direct reflection of where your mindset is about life and business. So if you feel like you don't have the right clients, well, what do you need to change in your process and in your thought patterns in order to get the right clients? I so often talk with entrepreneurs like, oh my god, like my clients are so annoying and like it's so stressful. I'm like, okay, so why don't you change something? And you figure out they just have a lot of excuses, because it's easy to stay where you are than to change something. But that's also the beauty when you work on your own. The decision is all yours. You can decide with who you work and with who you don't work. There's just certain fears that come into play that say, oh, but like if you switch, you're gonna lose money, or if you switch, who's gonna work with you, right? So you learn how to work with these fears. And that's become really another powerful tool for me, where I understood, you know what? Once you understand what fear is and how to like transform it and transmute it into like energy that's positive, that's abundant, that's creative, you can achieve so much more in this world, and you can do so much more in your life than you ever imagined. So just be open that there are things out there right now at play for you that you do not understand, but they're 100% of the positive play for you, and it's just up to you to be open to receiving that.
Oh, that's wonderful advice there. I like that there. And something that just is, yeah, it really resonates with me. It's something that's just been trying to figure out how best to carry on my career in this travel journey there, and you know, mix my whole life together there. And sometimes you feel like you've got to make some compromises into how you approach your business. And I think once I realized what it was that I do best and the best experience that I've had, and recognized that I could actually provide that service, it just, yeah, I think that's where some of the clarity comes in. And
yeah, and just understand that may take time, right? Something that
It
you
does.
start off with your business might not be what you do in 10 years. Like,
Right.
I feel like we're slowly starting to shift, right? So it's what you start off with doesn't have to define who you are. It just means you're running a test right now to see if what are you doing, you can make money with it, and you get the reaction from people. And if they don't like something, change it, right? If you don't like anything, change it. And you'll see over time that it's an iterative process. It never ends. But the beauty is it's all up to you. So, yeah,
yeah.
that's how I see it.
I like that. Well, thank you, Pamela, for coming in, sharing your story with us, and sharing your words of wisdom.
Thank you too.
So how can our audience find you?
Best would be LinkedIn, or Instagram, or if however long TikTok works. LinkedIn, Pamela Wagner, just with my name. You'll find a banner currently with a bunch of press logos on there, just in case you find a bunch of people with my name. And Instagram is Pamela Wagner Official, because guess what? I'm not the only one with that name. And TikTok, you can find us with either Ajala Digital, AJALA Digital, or Hustle Less Live More. Both of the brands have a channel there.
Great. Well, we'll include that with our show notes with this podcast. So wherever you're listening on the podcast, you can find it there or on our website, leapinglifepodcast.com. Thanks again, Pamela.
Thank you so much, Jared.